Hello everyone, this is Nathan P. Butler, and this is the next of our mini Q&A episodes here on the channel. I notice I bounce a lot, so my apologies, you'll probably see me doing that plenty. This is mini Q&A number 14. This is going to be using questions from mini Q&A number 13. Now, the last round of mini Q&As was in that red or burgundy or maroon or whatever it is, Boba Fett shirt. So I'm collecting all the questions from that round, but there weren't any questions actually posted under mini Q number 12. So all the questions are coming from mini Q number 13, and it's a relatively manageable number, so we'll probably have just one or two in this round of mini Q&A episodes. But again, I always record these in batches at a time as I'm able. So for this batch, it'll be the I Speak Wookiee shirt. So if you want to ask questions for the next batch, put them underneath any of the videos that have this shirt from this little batch of episodes here. And then, again, I'll just keep going as I go along. But if you want to ask questions for these, always look for the newest of the videos, the newest number, or at least the newest batch, to make sure that I'm going to see those questions the next time that I record a new batch. So, let's kick it off here. We start with a question from Corey Newell, who asks, "Hi Nathan, would love your thoughts on the trailer and title for The Rise of Skywalker, the trailer for Jedi Fallen Order, and the latest info on The Mandalorian." So I got a feeling I'm going to be going in-depth with this on probably both of the podcasts I'm involved with. Star Wars Beyond the Films, neither Mark nor I were there, but we've been following it from home, so we'll probably do something relating to that or relating to Celebration news. And then Michael Morris and I do Cloud City Casino, and while it's not all gaming news coming out of Celebration, in fact, most of it is not gaming news, he and his wife were at Celebration, so we'll probably have an episode talking specifically about that. So my guess is longer responses will be there, but for those particular things that were mentioned, let's see. I guess I would say for The Rise of Skywalker, the teaser was pretty cool. I like the shots that we saw. I thought it was cool to see Lando back, see the retooled lightsaber hilt and that sort of thing, get a feel for what's coming. The Palpatine laugh was kind of a surprise, and to find out after the fact that that was actually something that was in the cards for the sequel trilogy from the very beginning is pretty cool. Kind of makes you wonder to what degree that was shared with others, but whatever. I'm interested in seeing where it goes, because this film feels like, it's sort of a big mystery, right? We kind of thought we knew what was going to be in Last Jedi, and then it was very different because of the whole subverting expectations and all that kind of stuff. After JJ doing 7, Johnson doing 8, the differences in tone between the two and the way that 8 sort of took it in different directions and you probably expected JJ to go in after 7, it makes me wonder where they're going for 9. And as such, I feel like we just need to know more. But usually, I'm somebody who will see a teaser for a Star Wars film and be like, oh, that's pretty cool. It's the trailer that gets my attention. It's the trailer that makes me really excited. Even for Solo, the trailer actually got me excited, and I was not all that excited for Solo to begin with. Same thing with Rogue One. So I would say that, the teaser was good. I want to see more, but we've got, 8 months, give or take, to get more. So we'll see. As for the title, I don't know. I'm hoping that the title is sort of either a misdirection or a play on words or something like that, because the idea of Rise of Skywalker, unless they're specifically talking about Anakin somehow, or Luke somehow, or maybe somehow, even though it's not actually, his surname, Ben coming into his own and picking up Luke's legacy or something within that family line, the most obvious thing it could mean would be, oh, Rey's a Skywalker, which I really don't want to see, because I feel like that'd be kind of a cop-out given all the other things. Although we are told there's more to the story than just they were filthy drunk traders and they sold you for drinking money and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see. But, I'm optimistic about it. I think it'll be a fun film, but I've enjoyed all the ones so far being put out by Disney, even the ones I didn't think I was going to like as much, like Solo. So I'm here for the ride. As for Jedi Fallen Order, pretty excited. I think it's weird that Joker / Velasco brothers from Gotham are the Jedi hero or the Padawan hero, but I'm excited for it. The idea that they are claiming, and I say claiming because it's EA, EA, it's in the minutia. EA, it's in the microtransactions. EA, we effed up the game. The fact that it's EA doing the publishing for this, it kind of makes me sit back and say, well, we'll see. But if they are true to their word that there will be no microtransactions, if they are true to their word that it will be a solo story type of game, right, a single-player story-based type of game from Respawn, I think that'll be pretty sweet. It actually makes me want to break out Titanfall 2. I've had Titanfall 2 for years now. I just haven't played it. I got it like with a deal or something. It was like that, and I think it was the Tomb Raider game that had the VR add-on, the free VR mission or something, and I was getting into PSVR at the time. So I wound up doing like this special deal and got Titanfall 2 and then never touched it. So I probably should play some Titanfall 2 because it looks like some Titanfall 2-esque action in some of the footage we saw, particularly when we see, and granted it's a cutscene type of trailer, but we saw the Jedi basically jumping and running on a wall, which made me think immediately Titanfall. So we'll see, and I really ought to play Titanfall 2. I need to get that out and actually play it. As for The Mandalorian, so I think that everything I heard at the panel sounded awesome. I'm excited for The Mandalorian. I think it'll be really, really good. I think the way that they handled the footage for Mandalorian, for people who were streaming at home, was bullshit. I think that if it's like they didn't learn the last time they pulled that crap. And I'm assuming that the idea is, and the excuse I've been hearing is, well, it's all proprietary stuff, it's all Disney Plus, so they didn't want anything airing at Celebration, etc., etc. It was promotional materials! Do you not want people to see promotional materials so they'll actually subscribe to your service so they can see the frickin' show? If that was their reason, that's an idiotic reason. Suffice to say, some enterprising folks in the crowd, though, managed to get footage of it, and I particularly kind of wonder if Favreau was sort of angling that direction, given the fact that he didn't actually give the warning about please don't record it until after the first thing actually was shown. And he warned ahead of time that people at home will get a blank screen, they won't be able to see it, which would have caused people in the crowd to be like, oh, really? Uh-huh. So, yeah. But what I've seen, I mean, it looks good, the clip looks good, the trailer looks good, the behind-the-scenes stuff looks good. I think it'll be fun. I'm hoping that it'll be something that gets, I mean, a full-size season, you know, but not more episodes than we need. Like, I felt like Resistance had a long, slow, dull burn early on until we finally got the episodes that really paid off, and it was really, really cool. I felt like that season, even if they were trying to pull a Straczynski Babylon 5 first season kind of thing, could have been significantly shorter and still done what it needed to do, and done it in a more compact form without losing people early on to the fact that it had kind of forgotten it was Star Wars. Whereas with some shows, you know, a longer season can work. I kind of feel like a shorter season for some is the sweet spot. It depends on what they do with it. So give us a season that is hopefully long enough to really be enjoyable over a long period of time, since they're going to be releasing it one at a time instead of all at once. But don't kind of overstay the welcome. Make sure it all matters as it goes. And I think with this being, you know, the Favreau-Filoni type of thing, then I think it'll be really good. As far as, you know, the fact that they're doing it week by week by week, I actually found that kind of surprising. But in essence, that's the hook, right, for the paid streaming service. Netflix's hook is, come in, watch all the stuff you want to binge watch, that's our stuff that we release all at once, and then here's a universe of other stuff to watch. Whereas any of these company-specific streaming services, it seems like doling it out bit by bit is kind of the big deal, so that you don't wind up going slower. Like, this is the first year ever with Game of Thrones that my wife and I have actually decided to subscribe to HBO Now for the duration of the season, instead of subscribing once the season is over, or the last week of the season, and binge watching them all. Whereas, for me, it was a no-brainer to subscribe to the full year service, even when it wasn't going to be airing all year. But a no-brainer just to go, yep, yearly subscription for Star Trek Discovery, knowing it was going to be week to week for CBS All Access. So, you know, give us something that justifies the money. I think they're going to do that. But there's actually another question about Disney Plus for this time, so let's hit that one. Greg Diner, I believe I'm pronouncing your name right, said, aside from the Star Wars stuff, obviously, is there anything you're excited about in regards to Disney Plus? Yes. Next question. No, I'm kidding. So, yeah, actually, I mean, I'm a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so the idea of the Winter Soldier / Falcon series is interesting to me. The Loki series, that actor in that role has been gold ever since introduced, so that'll be pretty sweet. So anything MCU related, but also now just the Disney Vault, the Disney Library of movies is a big deal. With a kid now who is 7 months old and today, sat up by himself for the first time, multiple times, yes, so we can finally break out the bouncy from the door frame thing, which he loves now. With a little kid, I was planning on building a library of Disney films, among other things, right? Paw Patrol and stuff like that. But I was trying to build up this Disney library, and it struck me that, there's not really a need to. We got Aladdin a while back in preparation for having the baby, and the fact that I just like Aladdin. We've got the 4K Little Mermaid, we got the 4K Lion King, but then we're like, wait, why bother buying any more of them? Unless they're not going to be perhaps in 4K or something on the service. But, if we're going to be able to get them all through the service, why go out and buy more of them individually, except for those Disney Movie Reward points that I have building up that I haven't spent because nothing's really worth it. In fact, I was going to spend them on Blu-rays of Disney stuff. Only now, what's the point? So, having the Disney Vault, it's not all going to be stuff I would be super into watching myself, but having a baby, as he gets older and as he starts watching more and more of that kind of stuff, I want to get him into that, and that'll be fun. I'll get him into sort of the classic cartoons of my youth and beyond, in both directions, older and newer. I feel like this is going to be a time where there's a streaming service that I'm getting specifically for one main thing or a couple of main things, where it's not like I'll be sitting back and saying, well, I got it for this, but I guess I'll watch this other stuff to justify it, which is kind of what's tending to happen to me with CBS All Access. Like, we love Discovery. We watch Discovery. But yeah, we'll also catch Young Sheldon and we'll catch SEAL Team because, well, we paid for the service. You know what I mean? This will be something where there's a lot of stuff I'll actually be getting use out of, even if it is just a one-company service. Next question comes from Punk Nerd, who asks, hey Nathan, which coast are you going to for Galaxy's Edge? Disneyland is May 31st, and Walt Disney World is August 29th. The bigger attraction, Rise of the Resistance, is opening later in the year. To use an overused trope in modern day, did you just assume my Galaxy's Edge attendance? I can tell you for sure that when we go, eventually, it'll be East Coast, it'll be Disney World, not Disneyland in California, because we live in Georgia, so that just makes logical sense. But as far as when, it'll be a while. Let the crowds die down, let the craziness die down, let the child grow up, so he can actually appreciate it when we go. I see us doing it sometime when he is young, but not as young as he is now. He wouldn't remember any of it, and going by ourselves would be kind of sucky for the baby, in theory, in retrospect, and fairly expensive for us to splurge on while we're dealing with, baby costs and that sort of thing. So, it'll be probably years before we ever go to Galaxy's Edge, and when we do, it'll be Disney World. JL, who has asked questions quite a bit on previous Q&As, but not as much recently, he asks, Disney now owns all Star Wars, and there's a rumor that they worked on a mega set that might have included all the original theatrical Star Wars trilogy. Do you think that is possible? So I talked about expectations, and I want to say it was mini Q&A number 12, so I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but specifically on the question of will they release the original theatrical cuts, again, my response would be what it's been all along, which is that I don't see it happening unless there is a change in mindset that lets them say, okay, you know what, this is what we should do, or a change of leadership, because right now what you have is a leadership that says, through their personal loyalty to Lucas, even though he is not heading the company anymore, that they don't want to essentially move away from what he saw as his definitive vision of the films, which is the 2011 cuts, so that they're not going to be putting out original theatrical editions, or they're not going to be putting out other editions than those. I have heard a comment recently that a friend of mine was thinking that perhaps Lucas actually has in the contract somewhere that he gets to approve which version is ever released. If so, and I hadn't heard that anywhere else before, but if so, that would also mean that they'd need his okay before doing that as well. So we'll see. But I would say to expect to see the 2011 cuts well before we ever see theatrical cuts, though I would love to be surprised on that. And finally, the question I had to research in my own home video library. So I guess this will be just a one episode, one mini Q round with the I Speak Wookiee shirt. So if you want questions for the next episode will be another round of recording once more questions are gathered up. But we have a question here from Chris Clark. He says, I've been watching all your videos, as always, but recently noticed the Phantom Menace has a dominant position in your collection. Or does it? We shall see. I've been covering a lot of Phantom Menace stuff recently because of like the VCDs and everything, and translations out of, or not translations, but foreign versions out of other parts of the world, which I guess is what foreign means, so maybe I should rephrase that. But screw it, we'll keep going. Considering all the language variants on VHS, anti-theft boxes, etc. Oh, that was the end of that sentence. So, yes, I just said something redundant. It got me wondering, which movie do you have the most copies of? I would assume it would be one of the original trilogy movies considering time. That being said, I'd be interested to know for sure. Have you ever counted how many copies of each film you own? And if so, how many copies of each film do you have, and what's in the lead? So let me tell you how I figured this out. And yes, I've counted before, but it was so long ago that I don't think any of those numbers would have mattered anymore. So here's what I did earlier today. I grabbed myself a little thing of Post-it notes, and I went shelf by shelf to count how many copies of each film I had, okay? And we're talking 4 towers of 6 shelves each, some of which have things in double layer here. Plus, the top of this shelf, the bottom of that shelf, the second up shelf, and another shelf over here that you can't even see, right? Or you can sort of see. You can see the book side, but you can't see the home video stuff on the very, very bottom. So I went through and had a few rules for myself. One, if I was going to count this, I was going to count all of the films. So we're talking episodes 1 through 8. We're talking Solo and Rogue One. We're talking the Ewok telemovies. We're even talking the Clone Wars and the times that they took episodes of Droids, Ewoks, or the Clone Wars and sort of, I call it bastardizing them. They merge them to create theatrical length versions, like feature film length versions of them as movies, even though they started out as episodes. Though I was only counting those as the movie form, not the episodic form. I didn't count any partial copies, so like the Super 8 reels of A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back don't count, they're not the full films. I also had a decision to make as far as what to do about sets and multiple items. So when it came to sets, I basically said, okay, if it's like a trilogy set, that's 1 copy of each film, I will count those separately. I was not going to include any duplicates, so they're all from different releases of one kind or another. All my duplicates that I'm like selling or whatever, just totally set aside, not part of the count. So these are all different releases. And then I came to the, well, wait a second. Even then, you still got to figure out what to do about multiple copies. Because think about something like, the 2006 and 2008 copies of the original trilogy. Each one of those had the 2004 cut and the so-called original theatrical edition, which we know wasn't actually original, unaltered, whatever. So does that count as 1 for each film? Or 2? The 3D Collector's Edition for The Force Awakens, that had a Blu-ray 3D disc, a Blu-ray, and a DVD. Not counting the digital copy because it's not a physical copy. Does that count as 1? Or does that count as 3? Is it copies of the film or releases of the film, etc.? Is it different products or is it different discs / tapes / whatever? So I decided to basically count both. I went through and kept a running tally of each item, and then every extra copy packed within an item, like say that collector's edition for The Force Awakens with the 3D disc, I put a little note out to the side about the extras. So it had like a 1 and then a 2 in parentheses for that particular one, so that I could keep track of what the numbers would be if I counted them by item, or at least by copy of the film if you take them out of the trilogy sets, or by number of discs in the ones that had multiple copies of the film in it. And I think what you'll find is that the first, I don't know, probably 6 or so items, or at least the first 5 items on the list, you could pretty much have guessed, and the other 3 on the other end. And I should note here, I'm talking about all the ones in my collection, whether it's the US or the UK or Japan or Italy or Spain or wherever. All different ones were included. I did not discriminate by region. All right, so that being said, the one with the least is actually tied. There are 3 animated films, if you want to call them that are tied for the same amount at the bottom of the list. That is Darth Maul Returns, which of course had the regular DVD release, and then it was part of that 3-pack for the Clone Wars where they just repackaged them. And tied with that, with only 2 copies, was Ewoks Tales from the Indoor Woods and Droids Treasure of the Hidden Planet, both of which are just 4 episodes of their respective series, edited, bastardized, together into a so-called film. Because, of course, there was the DVD release that had those, and I had that in the regular release, and then I had that in that special boxed set that included the Ewok telemovies, the Droids one, and the Ewoks one, all in one package, the club special. So, 2 of all 3 of those. Then coming in with 3 copies, Pirate and the Prince. Again, I'm only talking about them in film form here, so that's the original VHS release, the DVD release, and then the DVD release inside the package with Ewoks and the Ewok telemovies. And then coming in with 4 copies, we had, the other one of those, right? The Haunted Village, which were the same releases essentially as I mentioned for the Droids when the Pirates and the Prince, except I've also got a screener of Haunted Village, so that upped it by 1. Then, coming in with only 7 copies, which isn't very much for me, coming in with only 7 copies, it was, what do you think? The Clone Wars film. 7 from the US, 1 from the UK, because they had the regular Blu-ray release, the Target Blu-ray release, the Target DVD release exclusive, the Best Buy exclusive, the regular DVD version, the 2-disc DVD version, and so on and so on and so on. And then, once you get to the 6 from the exclusives and the regular ones in the US, I had one on UMD from the UK. Then coming in with 8 copies, just barely getting past Clone Wars, it was Battle for Endor. Ewoks: The Battle for Endor. And that was basically the regular VHS version, the rental VHS version, the screener VHS version, the DVD version inside the same package as I mentioned before, the American Laserdisc, the Japanese Laserdisc. I want to say I'm missing one somewhere. Oh yeah, the one from, I think it was Spain, that's on in the same little multi-film package as Willow. Yeah, that one. So 8 for Battle for Endor, and coming in with 9, Caravan of Courage, right? The other Ewok adventure. You may be saying, wait a second, they tended to match up, so why do you have one more of that one than the other? Because there's something I haven't shown you yet. I'm going to be doing an episode soon of From the Star Wars Home Video Library to look at the Japanese VHD of Caravan of Courage, but I haven't had a chance to record it yet. So all those you would kind of expect to be lower in numbers, and then the other one that is still lower in numbers regardless of whether we're looking at it as 1 per release or we're looking at it where something that has like Blu-ray and DVD would count as 2 as opposed to 1, you probably, I guess, could have predicted because it's the one that's the newest, right? And that was Solo. For Solo, I have 15 copies if we don't allow combo packs to count more than once. If we allow all the different copies in a combo pack, like again, 4K plus Blu-ray to count as 2, even though they're in the same package, so we'll call that the expanded number, okay? The extra copies expanded number versus the condensed release number. Does that make sense? So 15, if we're just talking about the condensed regular release number. If you count all the extra copies packed in with them, 24 copies of Solo at this point. And yes, that is the least of the live-action films. Those, again, those are the same regardless of which way we're counting. Those bottom slots are. Then you get into the middle, and it gets really kind of mixed up, because so many of those releases outside of the original trilogy, some of them have been around longer, but haven't got a lot of those multi-disc releases. Some of them have been around a while, but didn't have a lot in the way of like, store exclusives and different variants and stuff like that. So the numbers really change. If we're only counting 1 disc or 1 copy from each release, without accounting for any extra discs, then the numbers work like this as we go up. We have a tie of Rogue One and The Last Jedi with 20 copies each, then 23 copies of Attack of the Clones, 25 copies of Revenge of the Sith, 30 copies of The Force Awakens, and 32 copies of The Phantom Menace. So, he's right. I mean, outside of the original trilogy, at least by that count, Phantom Menace is actually the one that stands out, which kind of makes sense because it's the next oldest one, at least as far as the live-action movies go. But as soon as we start counting in all those extra copies, like, hey, it's a Blu-ray 3D release with a Blu-ray disc and a DVD, so we'll count it as 3. You start counting like that, and after Solo, it goes Attack of the Clones with 25 copies, Revenge of the Sith with 27, The Phantom Menace, middle of the pack, with 34, Rogue One with 35, The Last Jedi with 36, and I kid you not, The Force Awakens with 52. Damn. That then brings us into the last 3. And just as you probably expected, it's gonna go Return of the Jedi, The Empire Strikes Back, A New Hope. The question is, what are their actual numbers? And their numbers are kind of frightening, to be honest with you. So for Return of the Jedi, if we're not counting multiple copies, so we're not counting the DVD, Blu-ray combo pack as 2, we're just counting it as 1. We're not counting the 2006 release as 2, we're just counting it as 1, despite it having the unaltered version as a bonus disc and that sort of thing. The clean, compressed numbers here. Then there are 61 copies in my collection of Return of the Jedi, 62 of The Empire Strikes Back, and 80 of A New Hope. Again, all different releases across all formats, including other countries that I happen to have them from. Dang. Now, if we add in the extra copies, the number spread isn't nearly as big as like that 30 to 52 spread for The Force Awakens, but it does still grow, and in some cases it does still grow somewhat broadly here. So for Return of the Jedi, that jumps the total to 70. For The Empire Strikes Back, it jumps the total to 75. And for A New Hope, it jumps the total to 89. So, wow. So again, if we're talking about only counting each release once despite having multiple copies in it, it's going to be a tie between Treasure of the Hidden Planet, Tales from the Endor Woods, and Darth Maul Returns, then Pirates and the Prince, then The Haunted Village, the Clone Wars film Battle for Endor, Caravan of Courage, Solo, Rogue One, The Last Jedi, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, The Force Awakens, The Phantom Menace, Return of the Jedi, The Empire Strikes Back, and of course, A New Hope, with the one with the most being 80, the one with the least being 2. If we're talking about all the animated ones. The least, if we're only talking live action, is 15, if we're not counting the Ewok films because they're not live action theatrical films, at least not in the US. They were released theatrically elsewhere. If we're talking about all different copies within a single release being counted, like a Blu-ray DVD combo pack counting as 2, then Darth Maul Returns, Treasure of the Hidden Planet, and Tales from the Endor Woods are still tied at the bottom. Then still Pirates and the Prince, The Haunted Village, the Clone Wars film Battle for Endor, Caravan of Courage, and Solo. But then it changes. Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, The Phantom Menace, Rogue One, The Last Jedi, The Force Awakens. Then it goes back to the same order but different numbers for the top 3, Return of the Jedi, The Empire Strikes Back, and at the top, A New Hope with 89. The lowest still being 2, unless we count only live-action theatrical films, in which case the lowest is 24 for Solo. I mean, that's a lot, especially since I've only been collecting for about 6 years now, but I've been pretty hardcore collecting for about 6 years, primarily to get all the US stuff that I could possibly get my hands on, and then eventually also starting to branch out into other regions. For those who are curious and want a preview of what's coming, obviously, we're going to do an episode, probably episode number 200 of the numbered episodes in the series, although it's more like 270 or something if you count all the supplemental ones. For From the Star Wars Home Video Library, we've got the toy packs that came with the DVDs. I've shown you the DVDs before. Now I'll show you the unopened packages. At some point, I'll get to the Willow stuff, the Blu-ray, DVD, VHS, Betamax, and Laserdisc copies of Willow. We'll be looking at that aforementioned Caravan of Courage VHD. And let's see, what else? It's not sitting in the room, so I gotta try to remember. The Muppets VHS and DVD that has the special segment with Mark Hamill, reprising his role as Luke Skywalker with Miss Piggy and all. Let's see. And the Ewoks, we'll be looking at the Volume 1 of the single episode Ewoks VHS release, because I finally found one with the correct label, because most of them were misprinted with the wrong label. And the French DVD set, the equivalent actually of this set here, this Blu-ray set right there. The one that has the Yoda Funko Pop in it. I have the DVD version of that now, and its packaging on the inside is really cool because it's got containers that the US version didn't have and that the UK version didn't have. That it's kind of interesting because it's the sheer amount of DVD discs. It's going to be pretty cool to look at. So yeah, more episodes still to come. So there is stuff that maybe you haven't seen that would have been accounted for within that, but most of that stuff I just mentioned, it's not theatrical films anyway. So predominantly it's stuff that you would have seen on the show, with the exception of one screener that I'm not going to show on the show because of the nature of modern screeners and the ability from certain aspects of screeners to be able to track down who would have sold it. Granted, it came from eBay, but not going to run the risk. So with that, this should be pretty much the end of this mini Q&A. It ran a little bit long, but I knew that that question from Chris was going to run a bit long, so I wanted to hold it for the end. And I also knew that I wanted to get it out in this episode because I was so excited from having finally made a friggin' count again. I still can't believe that my friggin' collection of A New Hope is already up in the 80s, and depending on how you count it, about to cross into the 90s. And it does also kind of blow my mind that I have 9 friggin' copies of Caravan of Courage. Who knew? Anyway, if you want to ask questions for the next mini Q&A, as I mentioned before, put them in the comments underneath this episode. There are no more episodes in this chunk wearing the I Speak Wookiee shirt. This is the chunk. It's just one episode. Put your questions here, and when I go to record the next episode, which I guess would be number 15, I'll be wearing a different shirt so you can tell the different chunks of recording apart, and I'll be answering any questions from beneath. Maybe, having gone through the big old line of numbers here for my count, maybe having gone through that count, that will spark some interest and maybe some other questions about the home video stuff beyond the ones that we tend to see pretty often, like what's your favorite, or what's the most interesting, or what was the hardest to find. Maybe there'll be some bizarre detail question that somebody wants to ask, who knows. But with that, we'll wrap up this mini Q&A. Thank you all for your questions. I really appreciate it, and I hope this has been a fun little adventure down what do you call it, numerical lane. It's almost an episode of Sesame Street, right? 80 copies of A New Hope. Loser. No, kidding. Well, mostly kidding. So, it's late at night. What can I say? Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next mini Q&A.